When people ask me, what's so special about First Baptist on Fifth? I answer quickly. It's not our building, though lovely, or our worship, though meaningful, not our gatherings, though life-giving, or even our missions and ministries in the world, though impactful. The very best part of First on Fifth? Our people, hands down. In our confession of identity, we said this of our community. Here, you'll see retirees and families with rambunctious little ones, teenagers discovering their identities, middle-agers juggling all the demands of this season, young people navigating adulthood for the first time, and seniors rich in wisdom and encouragement. You can read our fiery op-eds in the paper, pass us moving about on the city streets, see us building ramps for the underserved, catch us finding beauty in our gardens and on hiking trails, and experience us taking delight in the world. At the core of our community, we are folks who love each other well. And at the core of our life together, we share in meaningful conversation about what it means to live and love in this world. That's what you'll hear and who you'll hear from in our new podcast series called Life Together. Each episode will be hosted by one of our ministers and will feature a conversation with one or two or even several of our beloved church members. They'll answer a handful of questions about their story, about objects or artifacts that represent their journey, about questions or doubts they wrestle with, and why they are a member, and finally, what gives them hope. As you listen to their wisdom and laughter, their audacious hope and abundant love, I trust you'll be as inspired and moved as I am on the regular. T.S. Eliot once asked, "What life have you if you have not life together?" Join us this season for Life Together.
Hello and welcome to the First Baptist on Fifth Life Together podcast series. We want to say thank you to our listeners and our viewers today for joining us. And we are so delighted to have today with us Bethany Leggett and Maggie Clark. Bethany and Maggie have a beautiful friendship story. They joined our church back in 2023 on the exact same day. They are both part of Wake Forest Divinity School. Bethany graduated last year. Maggie is getting ready to graduate. All right, it's coming up. Yes.
It'll happen.
It'll happen, I promise. I have enjoyed getting to know Bethany and Maggie both individually and also as friends. And so we're going to hear from them today, learn all about them. You are in for a treat as we hear from both of them. So let's start with the obvious question. Tell us how in the world you guys became friends.
Do you remember?
I was like, do you know the exact moment?
I don't know. I know that we met at Wake, and
yes,
just before we started rolling.
I'm sure it was in class, or it was during your orientation.
Or I mean, it wouldn't have been a community lunch yet.
No, but that became one of our favorite
places is our community lunches, and we just became really fast buds.
Yeah,
and sisters, dog sitting and and
shenanigans, surviving Egypt.
That's a whole nother podcast. Surviving Egypt.
Like, our friendship has traveled the world at this point.
It really has. It's gone through broken limbs, major surgery.
Not caused by each other.
Not caused by each other, but around the same time too.
Just gone through it together.
Yeah.
But I do remember. So I don't remember the moment that we met, but I do remember being in class with you. It must have been towards the start. It must have been your fall semester.
Okay.
And I was going to ask a question, and Maggie asked it first. And I was like, oh, thank God, I'm not going to be the only one asking all the questions. Because, I think when we come to like, this was my second master's, this was your second master's. You've been in that environment before. And so I feel like we're also fully formed women that we're okay with being the one to ask the question first. And so I just saw a kindred spirit, and I was like, yes, this is going to be great.
Ask all the questions.
I can sit in the back row and put my hand down some more, and that's great. She is always sitting in the front row, and I was
I'm always in the front row. I'm a front row Baptist. I'm a front row student.
Back row Baptist.
I can give witness to that. You are always in the front row of our church services. I appreciate that.
Yeah. You gotta, as someone who's an educator myself, I need it just for my auditory processing disorders to be in the front to you can make any experience a small, intimate experience by sitting in the front row. Even I remember this from undergrad. I went to Chapel Hill, UNC Chapel Hill, go Heels.
Yes.
And I had a very small school experience, and then I went to Chapel Hill. It was so big, but I realized I can make any 150 person classroom still feel like a 20 person lecture or a 15 person recitation if I intentionally sit in the front and then introduce myself to my professors beforehand. And it's accountability because then they know your face.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No,
always asking the
I'm back row.
questions.
I need an exit strategy.
I mean, that is the name of your social media platform.
That is the name
Back
of
Row
my
Bound.
Back row bound.
So that
I'm
fits
going to
both
back
of your personalities
Yes.
beautifully.
Yeah.
And somehow the back row and the front row become friends.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is-
But we never met in the middle.
You never.
Either I'm coerced to go sit in the back with her, or I'm like, girl, come on, sit up front. It's like, because we have a little wake div section for those that like come to First on Fifth. There's usually a contingent of wake div that sits in the front left, and like a couple of pews.
Why do you
that
think
are
I joined the choir? So I could start sitting. But now I'm on the front row.
Now
of
you're in
the
the front
choir.
row of the choir?
So because I'm short, and so it's just a thing
that's
that I
true.
have to do. It's just a burden, but I will carry it.
So you guys met in divinity school, but why did the two of you decide to come to First on Fifth? You could have gone anywhere as friends. Why did you choose First on Fifth?
Zach Jackson.
I was about to say Zach
Zach
Jackson.
Jackson.
We have
Zach Jackson.
Well, shout out to Zach.
Yeah.
It was Zach in Georgia. Because
Oh, yeah, and Georgia.
I was convinced, like, I was like, we're talking about God all day long. Like, I'm good there. I'd already had a class where I was like, I'm not going to go back to the faith tradition I entered with, or denomination. And so I just felt like I'll put that off. And then Zach was like, okay, no problem. But if you want to try, I'll be there on this Sunday. And
That
then
was so much more forward with me. I did not have much of a choice. Well, I was very much looking for a church home. Coming in, I knew seminary and divinity school was gonna be a life-changing and heart-changing and deep soul work experience. And I knew I wanted to be in a community that could hold me, not just in my schooling experience, but particularly in my faith experience. And so it was orientation. And we have Davis Chapel, which is like a little slice of heaven. And we were singing and doing a small like opening service for orientation, and literally the next session that we were downstairs, Zach literally pulled me aside on the stairwell, like not even, and like if anybody knows me, stairs are not my friend. I've broken my foot, the same foot twice on stairs
was there for that
in
last
5
one.
years, and you were there in Egypt for the last one. And yeah,
Egypt.
Egypt,
Yeah.
like I
Well,
said, that's
yeah.
a whole other podcast.
Yes.
But Zach said, so I heard you in chapel. You were always welcome to come and join our choir. I was not invited to join the church. I was invited to come and join the choir.
But if you've heard Maggie sing, you know exactly
That's
why.
true.
Like-
She is a
like,
beautiful singer.
Yes,
I do.
you're
I
a
do.
Beautiful singer.
I am a singer.
I joined choir for the robes and to get out of the front row. You joined, you sing beautifully.
Thank you. Thank you. I told Zach, I said, I had just finished. I was like, I'm on sabbatical from that season of my ministry. I had sung all through the pandemic, basically as a soloist and 4-person choir at my home church. I was like, this is a season where I'm ready to like be a member of a congregation and like be in the congregation and not up. at
Not
the
leading
forefront.
from the
Not
front,
leading.
but leading from within.
Leading
Yes.
from within and,
Yeah.
and just having that experience. I don't think I've had a Sunday until I entered seminary, because I've been in choirs for like many decades. I
Yeah.
guess I can say that now. I'm 33, but
At least 3.
at least 3 decades, right? But it is a very different experience of being able to soak in. I can't speak for others, but I can speak for myself, of receiving a sermon or homily and being able to enjoy and soak up the experience of a service when you are simply receiving rather than being a part of the creating. And being a part of the creating is a wonderful privilege, yet there are times where, like, if I'm in the choir, I can't pull up my cell phone and take notes. I mean, I could, but everything's is recorded and things like that. So the freedom to be able to sort of just be and take everything in, and let it be like a whole full experience. And it is a whole full experience when one is in the choir or leading in worship in some way, shape, or form. It's just different.
Yeah, different experience.
It's a different experience. And when I came to First on Fifth, one of the first things that I remember is I had never been a part of a church family that the lead pastor was a woman. And I had experienced women pastors before, but not to the extent of a senior pastor and staff. And also, it was just so liberating and so freeing, particularly going into ministry myself. And not one, not two, but there was several, because Nikki was on staff at that point.
Oh,
and
yes.
so
Nikki Byers, shout out to
shout
Nikki.
shout out. So there were at least 3 women that were on staff, and I knew the type of community I would be entering into, because Emily always introduces herself in church, not as lead pastor, not as senior pastor, as one of the pastors here. And that told me so much about the leadership of this church, as well as the community itself, of leading with one another side by side.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, I definitely, so Zach was polite but insistent. He kept coming
very
back at
insistent.
me. And so I started by watching online. Is how
I remember it was a treat before Bethany joined the choir. It was a treat when we would see her in person. But that is a completely valid way of worshiping.
Honestly, thank you. It is a completely valid way of worshiping. Obviously, I love digital ministry. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
If you're not watching the video right now, for those listening, the microphone is laying on Bethany's shoulder,
and I just keep moving my hands.
Everything's fine.
But no, I wanted to. I had to scope it out. To see, because I grew up Methodist. I was baptized in the Methodist church, confirmed in the Presbyterian church, PCUSA. So I'd been around congregations with women involved. It was very important to me. I always go to a website to see if there are women in leadership roles in a church. And then I was like, the one thing that I know about CBF is my friends go to this one CBF church. So I didn't know much about it. And which is like, my background was religion reporting and other things like that. So the fact that I didn't I just had to do my own research first before I stepped into the actual sanctuary. Yeah. So I watched a lot from my couch, and I was like, oh, okay, these people seem pretty cool. Like,
and
okay.
Luna liked it too.
Him. Yeah. My dog Luna was a co-participant in the watching at home. But it was just like, it was a low bar entry point. And that's what I needed at the time, because I was figuring things out theologically. And I was like, I don't want to go fall in love with the people and then be like, but that's like not really where I feel my heart is right now. So I got to get all of those feelings out in advance. And then I made sure I had friends in the pews before I came in.
Yeah.
And then I still, after I joined, there were many Sundays where it's a 50-50 if I'm going to be in person or if I'm worshiping online. And then I joined choir, and now I'm there as much as I can.
Every Sunday.
Every Sunday.
But, that's actually a really good point, because for so many in our world, church has been a hurtful place or a place of pain in a way that maybe it was family pain, a family's there, or friend pain or whatever. And I applaud you for sort of naming that it's okay to join digitally for a while. And back in the day, we had a TV ministry, and, people would watch us and then walk through the doors. It's kind of like the new front door of the church.
It is the new front door of the church.
I love that. I will say it's a very sad thing. And this is one of the things that hurts so much about ministry in church at large, church with a big C as an institution, is that it truly takes an act of courage to step into the doors of a church these days, not knowing what you're going to get. And we should know what we're getting walking in, if you know the gospel. But sadly, we don't always know what we're getting. And I will speak for myself as a queer person, as a disabled person, stepping into the doors of a church. You have to do that research ahead of time. And like, even when you do that research ahead of time, it is still a courageous act. If you have any in general, but also if there's any type of church trauma or church harm, to step through those doors. And what once and what should be a safe haven is not for so many. And so,
I felt the same way as an unpartnered person. I was like, oh, am I going to stick out? Is it just families? Like, is it just am I going to be so identifiable being solo that I will feel uncomfortable? Because I've visited churches where everybody's like, oh, are you married? Or, oh, like they're being polite.
Almost like, what's wrong with you?
But like,
you're not married. You don't have children.
Into this church and everything that they
here's our
give me.
singles group. Here's our singles ministry.
Stop it. No, I mean
we all know those.
Yes,
we all know
those
those.
happen.
And that's
but it's also like all of the metaphors, all the sermon titles, all of the things are always about families and children a lot. And if women were involved at all, it's usually in the youth ministry only. And so that was just something where I kind of wear that armor when I go into a space is like, am I going to represent the only unpartnered non-mother in this space? And I think within 2 weeks of coming to First on Fifth, there was a quarterly conference, and the big report was happening. There was a big report,
like the state of the church.
The state of the church, maybe. And I remember Emily got up and talked about the growing population of our nation and the world, and how there's a lot more single people, and how the church is adapting to that. And to know, like, I heard that without me, it wasn't because I was in that room. She was going to say that no matter what. I was like, oh, there are places that are talking about this. Yeah. And then, I mean, I was not thinking of ordination at the time, but the fact that I knew that the congregation was talking about this meant that maybe that door would be open, because there are places that, like, if they ordain women, they may not ordain single women. Solo women, unpartnered women.
Absolutely.
So it was like just that kind of like gift, that little dove moment of just being like, oh, look, there are places that see the full you of who you are, no matter who you are when you walk in.
That you're a full person
that I'm a
on
full
your
person.
own.
Yes.
I will say, I'm not sure I mentioned this earlier, both Bethany and Maggie are in our ordination process. They are right in the middle of it, planning their services.
Ordination twins.
We are very excited. So since it's fresh in your mind to talk about God things, all the God things. And I will sort of ping off each other if you want to, but can you describe a time or a place or something where your view of God was shaped either for good or ill, and what that looked like for you, how you wrestled with that, how you came through that? Has there been a specific time in your life that has happened? Bethany, we'll start with
times. And I've spoken about this metaphor before, but with diff school, what I learned very quickly is it's like a Lego house where you come in that first year and you stomp on all the Legos. Your theological house of worship, and you're just stomping all over it. Yeah. And then the second year is you pick up every little Lego and you examine if it's still something that you believe in or not. And then by the third year in graduation, and you will get this, you have a new reassembled Lego house of worship, hopefully. Yeah. And it may look completely different than what it was. And so I had a lot of those mini moments looking at each Lego piece. And one of those was just naming God. And one of my favorite stories that I'd never heard about was Hagar being the first to name God. And once I learned that, and to know, like, she picks a name that's the one who sees me, I was like, that is so personal. How have I not seen that before? What would I name God? And so I have this like running list. I think I'm up to like 50 names now of the different names for God that I really, really like.
I need to see that. You need to email that to me.
Oh, it's handwritten in a journal. But like I incorporate it because I love liturgy, and what I want to do is start writing more curriculum on liturgy and add creativity into that, and tide changer is one of them that I use for God, and wind bringer, and just like I love nature imagery, so a lot of mine is nature imagery, but the names of God and being allowed to call this divine creator that we feel a part of, and that is a part of us, to be to have so many names that you can just pick and choose and find one for that moment and what it means in that moment.
So, that's beautiful.
That's a Lego I kept.
I love that. I love that you use the imagery of Lego. It's so much nicer than mine, but it's similar. My understanding was very similar of the steps and what I was prepared for coming in. One can never really be prepared for seminary or divinity school. But the analogy that I was given was open heart surgery. So not Lego.
Wow.
So your
a little
first
more intense than
a little
Lego.
more intense. But the first year is the incision of opening up, and then and moving everything around like you have to do when you have open surgery, and
sometimes painful,
but
or
necessary,
all the time painful,
but necessary, right?
Yeah.
You take everything out to get to what you need to look at, and then your second year is putting yourself back together and looking. I was like, okay, what are the vestigial? What's the appendix that stays out that you don't need anymore because it's not serving? And then so deconstruction, then reconstructing, figuring out what pieces make up my own theology that are not the theologies that I've inherited or been told I had to believe this. Like, what is my understanding of the divine? What is my understanding of ministry, wherever that is, in doing the work of the divine in the world. And then the third year is sewing back up, right? Understanding how my newfound theology or newly discovered understanding applies in the world. Like, how do I live that out? How do I put that into practice? And there, I preached this past week in our final chapel service, and spoke to our current students and basically saying, this is soul work, the work that you're doing during this season. And so be gentle with yourself.
Oh, yes. And say that again.
It be gentle with yourself. Be gentle. And I will say, for me, some of the experiences that shaped me, and this came up last night, a dear friend, Zach, a friend of the podcast, a friend of the church, asked me on my ordination council how I see myself having grown and my call. He brought up a conversation that we had very early on in my divinity school experience, reminding me how I was even hesitant of entering into Wake Divinity, one of the most progressive divinity schools out there, of not knowing if it could hold me, not knowing if I would be able to find belonging, whether I'd be deemed too heretical for the space, and realizing how much those narratives shaped me growing up in my faith journey, and how much that shapes the type of ministry I want to do and that I'm called to do. For those listening, I have very bright, vivid hair, very loud.
I'm trying to think of how to
it's
describe
like a fuchsia.
It is a fuchsia, but there's
purple in there too.
There's purple in there too. So just imagine your happiest berry.
Yeah,
like that's
Captain Crunch berry.
Yeah. It's berry. It's various shades of berry.
Various shades of berry. Love
Happy
that. I'll
berry.
tell that to my
Berry.
hairstylist.
Yeah.
And I am very loud in all senses of the word loud, vibrant, in so many ways, but was always given the messaging in every room that I walked in that I was too much, that I was too big for the space, that there was too much of me. And that was in school, that was so many places, but also particularly in the church. I moved around churches quite a bit. I was sprinkled in the Methodist tradition. Then my parents were ones that moved to where the Spirit led them. So Methodist, Presbyterian, Southern Baptist, which did some pretty strong harm for me growing up. And then eventually a CBF church that I chose in my later years in adult life. But I never felt like I belonged in any church community that I entered into and walked into. There were certainly people that I felt I belonged with in those spaces. But they were never, I was never invited to question, or I thought that if I did question, or I myself, I'm a universalist. So I believe in ultimate reunification with the divine. And I thought that was a dirty word coming in. And I had a sense that I knew from a very, very young age, like 7 or 8. I remember sitting in church pews, like hearing pastors, particularly like in the Southern Baptist context, of like talking about hell and shame and damnation and the need to evangelize, to save people's souls. And I was like, this is wrong. Like, this isn't right. Like, but I was not anything I was allowed to ask questions about or push.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
So one of the things I loved about our document, so for the ordination process, you have to give like a statement of faith, like 4 to 5 sentences on 12 different topics. One of them, God. Just please summarize God in 4 to 5 minutes.
In a paragraph. 300 words.
Or less. It's never more. Or less. And yeah, with your philosophy and my English background, that was really hard.
That's hard.
But what I liked about reading yours and knowing what I had written in mine, we both, when it came to evangelism, were like, nope.
Absolutely.
I was Methodist and then Presbyterian.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't like, but it made me really pause and think like, okay, we obviously have a lovely service that has an altar call at the end. How do I feel about that? And I'm always feeling uncomfortable about it. But what about it does it actually make me feel uncomfortable? And so I had to sit with that for a while when I was filling that paperwork out and say, I wonder, is it just my knee-jerk reaction of like the Presbyterian side of my upbringing? We were the frozen chosen, like we did not do that.
Oh my gosh.
Shout out to my presbys. I love you. But it did. Those 4 to 5 sentences really make you think about some heavy things and how my theology has changed and over salvation. I think under salvation, under the topic salvation, I just wrote that's God's business.
Right. I will say that's one of the things, one of the biggest things that has shifted for me is, I'm glad that you shared that, because my understanding of like evangelism is like, it's just, it's so steeped in a colonized mindset, and but I will say,
because that's one way we've seen evangelism.
That is one way, right?
And that's what
there are
I
other
learned.
ways that one can approach it and not be that, but I have not discovered that yet.
Well, I've discovered that here. I have, because I love the invitation that Pastor Emily does at the end now, because now I've thought like, ultimately, what do I feel comfortable that I could do and not be false to myself or my background? And to me, I see it as inviting to be part of a story. So storytelling is really big for me. And I love an open invitation to add your voice to an ongoing story.
Yes.
So that's
as Emily says, I look forward to seeing how you will lead us.
And if you found that this is the place for now, like it's just an open invitation to join the story. That it's not like you have to go out and hand out 50 pamphlets and stand on the street corners with a sign or like do a big campaign on a billboard or anything. It's just living your life and inviting other people into it. That I'm fine with. That's the story I'm joining.
And I will also say the story that I model with my actions and my deeds. I'll say that as well. Like you said, salvation, that's God's business. Absolutely. I also, I remember what I shared on my statement of faith for when I was those 12 daunting questions that aren't even questions. They're just words. Respond. Jesus.
The answer is Jesus.
It's like, yay, nay. What would you like? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
Is my homeboy.
What's your emoji?
Yeah.
What's your emoji with this?
Yeah.
And I grew up in a context where a lot of what was preached was personal salvation. What is Jesus doing for you? it was also an understanding of sin that was personal piety, personal
But like
morality.
that's so much ego. That's just like so
it
much
is.
ego.
It is so much ego. And
To
I
be
was like,
it's all about you. It's all about.
It's not about me. It's about we. Like not like we all the way home, but like us, the church, the people, the God's creation.
We've not had that on the podcast yet.
This whole time.
Sorry, guys. It's about the we. It's about the us. It's about all, not me, the singular, and the. Amy's losing it here.
I'm sorry. That's the best thing we've heard on a podcast in a while. We.
But I think for me, salvation, in one thing that I have always taken, and more recently in my ministry, an appreciation of the Lord's Prayer is, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Also, I say our mother. Just
I say our loving parent, our mother, our father. And I'm more understand kingdom rather than kingdom.
One of these days, I expect to be zoomed in my church robes, as I say, our mother.
Yeah, go for it.
I was touring with having the New Zealand Lord's Prayer, the Maori, the New Zealand in my ordination service. Sorry, I digress. Salvation of your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. It is about modeling what it like life on earth as it would be there. It means there's so much work to do. And that is the work of justice. That is the work of equity. That is the work of Jesus's ministry and Jesus's life on earth. And that is salvation. That it is doing that work until we are all free. We are not all free. And that is our collective responsibility to do that work. That is what is salvific. I don't find salvation on the cross. I found salvation in the life and ministry and the deeds of Jesus, how he lived his life and walked. I was just in a context where it was all focused on the death and the resurrection and what does that mean, and not as much focused on his life.
Yeah.
One of the ways that I realized I was going to have a theological crisis. And I wasn't prepared. Like there were some going in that I like knew about. Like I knew I've always had problems with X, Y, and Z. And not problems, but when you're in a context that doesn't allow you to ask hard questions,
you
then
can't pull that
they
tapestry
become
thread.
Yeah, they become the bad thing that you need to solve. You're not going to stop thinking about it. You're just going to think that what you're thinking is wrong. But I'm also a former journalist, and I was born this way to ask questions and it be okay. So one of the things that was surprising though was prayer life. And I was like, what do I actually believe about prayer? What do I think about it? I'm a very contemplative practice type of person. I am following the mystics in a lot of things. But what do I feel like? I don't feel anything in prayer. What's going on wrong? What's going off at first? And then I was like knee deep in reading Julian of Norwich, and love her. Shout out to Julian of Norwich. But it was this moment of just pure clarity that was beautiful to experience, was reading her words on prayer and seeing it not as a way of request to God about something. It was requesting God's vision for the now. So it was this idea that prayer is revelation. That when you pray for something, you want somebody to be healed. You want somebody to have an easier life, yourself maybe, or another person. What you're actually requesting is to see God's vision of perfection in this world. But there has to be that active element. There has to be that element of not just asking to be shown that, that, like, I want to be shown what it's like to live a healthy life. I want to be shown, There's also this idea that you have to go and do it. So if a friend of yours had a horrible diagnosis on something and you're praying for them. Of course you're praying for them because you love them and you want them to have a painless life. Like you don't want them to be in pain. But what other actions? Are you checking in on them? Are you bringing God to their bad moments? Are you contributing to cancer research? Like there's that active component that I hadn't really thought about before that has really landed me with prayer specifically, is that it's passive in only what it appears as.
Yeah.
There's such an active component now to prayer life for me that it's like, in order to see the world the way that God wants the world to be, you have to do something about it. So those prayer moments are that glimpse that it could be different. It could be better. It could be this.
And what is your role in that?
What is now my role? Because you've now, God has now created that awareness for me.
Jürgen Moltmann has an understanding of that in one of his texts about the Holy Spirit and his pneumatology, where those glimpses of the eschaton, those glimpses of the kingdom are both those moments of revelation and sadness, and not sadness, but it's what spurns us to move forward in it. Because once you see and have a glimpse of that vision of that, then you realize the work that still needs to be done. And so it calls you forward into action.
It's a heavy type of hope.
It's a heavy type. Hope is messy. Hope is not like this glitter. Like hope is
got scars.
It's got scars. It is just like,
she's tough.
She's tough.
So what is bringing you hope right now? Like, how would you summarize that for each of you? What is bringing you hope, since you brought it up?
The one time we're speechless.
Do you see hope in the world right now, or in the church, or at First on Fifth, or where do you see hope? Where are you feeling that?
I'll answer this how I answered one of my questions last night. In my ordination council, I find hope in the joy. Joy is resistance. And I want to say that my understanding of salvation that I touched on earlier, as well as this aspect of joy is resistance, like these are deeply rooted in Black womanist theology and frameworks. And I'd be very remiss to speak on it as without giving credit to those women and those theologians and those frameworks that have so deeply informed me. But joy as resistance is what I see hope. And so wherever one finds like pockets of joy, is one way that I see hope. And the fact that I'm seeing communities come together to resist, and hopefully giving people a break and a breather who have been doing the resisting. The community, marginalized people have been, and marginalized bodies have been doing this work for centuries. And they need rest. And it's time for white bodies. It's time for able bodies. It's time for cis, straight, het bodies to be allies and pick up the mantle. Indeed, not in name.
That's powerful. Yeah.
And I'm seeing more of that, not as much as I would like to see. But that gives me hope. And it gives me hope that I'm seeing people wake up. And that's really hard. Like that piece is very challenging, to want somebody so much to be so much further on their journey than they are. And that is one of the challenges of ministry as well.
To be patient with people who are on the journey.
Who are on the journey, whatever that journey is.
Right.
But particularly on the work of justice, it can be very, very challenging. So I see hope in seeing some people's eyes being opened.
Or taking a step.
And I think that's one of the things to talk about ministry is like, what is your ministry? What is my ministry? What rooms am I meant to be walking into? And what rooms do I need to know are not my rooms to walk into?
Right.
So,
can't be all things to all people.
Can't be all things to all people.
Right.
And I need to know where my wounds are, where I'm still bleeding from.
Yeah.
to know what spaces not to walk into and what spaces to walk into. But I'm gonna let I can talk more on this, but I know I want Bethany to answer her part
Oh, yeah,
about
where do you
joy.
find hope?
Because I just brought it way down from hope to something
I
else.
was
But
like, give me more time, Maggie. Keep talking.
but
No.
joy, seeing joy is where I find hope.
Yeah.
I find hope in a couple of different places. Honestly, I find hope in nature. So I sometimes don't want to be around other humans, especially right now. But that's how I recharge. That's how I can connect to the divine when I am too much in my head or my heart hurts too much because of whatever's happened. I need to be in nature. I need to be around other created things that are beautiful, just the way they are. Yeah. And that will remind me of my own beliefs and help me just recenter. I also love sassy humor. So
our Instagram reels.
Our Instagram reels. But honestly, I like being able to take a moment and see people tell truth. Like, I find hope in truth because there's just that recognition that we can name a thing. Once we can name it, we can move on. We can move on it. We can heal from it. We can challenge it. We can praise it. But it has to, like, people who are truth tellers and who are door openers, if they are telling the truth and leaving that door open for other people to walk through, they're the people I'm pinning my hope on. They're the ones that I see the work that they're doing, and they're giving me hope when I need to step out and take my contemplative walk, or the labyrinth walk, or whatever it is. I do love some meditation. I need people to bring me back. And it's the people who are inviting me in, who open the door, hold the door for me, who say, okay, we will be here when you're ready. And we will be talking about the truth. We will be here in our full selves. That's where I find hope.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that is true is both of you are beautifully gifted, and we see so much beauty in both of you because you're children of God. And you bring such unique voices to our faith community, which in turn will bring a voice to those outside of First on Fifth. And that's sort of our hope, is that people can hear your voices in that, a light sort of piercing through dark times, bringing a voice of hope. And you guys have done that beautifully today. And the world is better because you're in it. I am better because you're in my world here at First on Fifth. And we're so grateful to both of you for being here today. Grateful for your vulnerability and sharing about who you are. For our listeners, you can probably tell this is just a glimpse into Maggie and Bethany. And they are wonderful people. And if you want to get to know them more, please join us at First on Fifth.
You don't have to get us at the same time. We do. You can get one of us and then we'll track the other.
And just because you have a digital platform, I'm going to point people to that. Back Row Bound, found on Instagram. Yes. Is it TikTok or anything else, or just Instagram?
No, that's too much effort. I'm a millennial. It's Facebook and Instagram, and a website soon to happen.
Okay, cool. So y'all be on the lookout for that. And listen for Maggie's voice as she sings from the front pew of our church. But we are so grateful to our listeners today for joining us for our podcast. You can find all of our previous episodes at firstonfifth.org or anywhere you get your podcasts. We hope you will join us, and we will look forward to seeing everybody next week. Thank you.